Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me tonight I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Oh, I'm great. How are you, Alex?
Very good. Yeah, it's nice to get a couple of wins under our belts in the week since the last episode. Breaking a little bit of a curse. I know usually when we've been recording episodes lately, it's been followed by an unfortunate result. So great to get back-to-back wins, which started on the weekend. Actually started midweek last week against Sheffield Wednesday. It was a pretty even game for the most part, with pretty decent chances for both sides. But it was Bowen, that man again, scoring, breaking the deadlock on the 60th minute with a really well taken run and finish into the bottom corner from a lovely cross from Honeyman. And it was a great 1-0 win for City. So how did you see it, Dan?
Yeah, I think similar to probably how you've just described it. It was a pretty even game, but I think we were quite lucky to keep a clean sheet. Not only with Pennington blocking that one off the line, but there was plenty in that second half. Particularly, they started to open to hit us on the counter a little bit. And they put a few really dangerous balls through the box, and they were just unlucky not to have anyone just on the end of them a few times. It was hard in mouth at a few different moments that second half for me, particularly watching that game. So, but I think overall, I was the team as a whole was really happy. I thought Pennington, we talked about, this was sort of his chance to shine and get some minutes, and he really did. He played outstanding, really aggressive, solid defending, intercepting or knocking out those passes that were coming in to hit to his marker really well and really consistently. So he did a lot of really good things. Of course, that block on the line really stands out, but I think... I think everyone just worked really hard, and it was a really tough game, like we thought it was going to be. But I guess a nice run from Bowen and a little bit of class just to finish off that nice move and a 1-0. I'll take it.
Yeah, I think there were a few eyebrows raised when Honeyman got the start ahead of Lopez or other players, but he really proved his worth. He had a very energetic game and kind of capped off with that cross. And as you mentioned, Pennington really took his chance with both hands, which was great to see. It was a bit unfortunate. We'll talk about the other game in a second, but a bit unfortunate he missed that one with an injury because it'd be great to see him sort of string a few games together and get some consistency going. But yeah, he looked fantastic at right back, and it's great that he sort of offers an option there, because I know we've talked a little bit about how our potential lack of options at right back has been a little bit of an Achilles heel potentially if Lehigh were to go down injured. So always good to have those options. And as you said, it's just that sort of gritty 1-0 win. They had some great chances. I think it was when Fletcher came on. They hit the post right before we scored as well. So sort of, I guess, mirrors that Leeds game for us, where we had a really great chance right before they scored their second. Except this time we were the beneficiaries, that they hit the post and then we were able to score. So always good to grind out a win, and especially against the side who are just above us in the table going into the game. So really closes the gap now on the top six and really sets up a pretty intense game with Fulham this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make. That I think what I've been thinking about is like comparing where we are now to where we were last season, and how both times we're sort of right on that cusp of the top six, and now it sort of becomes hopefully, most of the squad was around last season and they've gone through this experience, and they sort of fell away last year. Hopefully we've got the bit of experience that they can actually take this opportunity with both hands, keep building on what they've done at the moment, stay in touching distance, close that gap, little by little, and hopefully come the end of the season we'll find ourselves in that six.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's I think the big difference for me feels this season that last season we were starting from so far back that we had to win, I think it was 6 or 7 games in a row just to even be in the conversation of making the playoffs. So it was almost as if as soon as we dropped that game to Villa, and then I think we stumbled in the next game as well against somebody else, it was almost like that was it, and that was our chance gone. And it was almost, we had to have a perfect run to even stand a chance. Whereas this season, for better or worse, we have been a bit inconsistent. We have dropped points in games that we should have picked those points up in, and yet we're still in touching distance. So it doesn't, I guess each game doesn't feel like it carries as much pressure as it did last season. So hopefully that's great for the players. Hopefully it lets them play with a bit more freedom and can actually keep that optimism going, even if we are to drop points in games, that we can actually kind of keep keep chasing. We're still in touching distance. We're right in the middle of that pack. But I guess now, before we talk about the second game from last week, we've got a bit of action in the transfer window, which is a bit surprising for us. It's not deadline day yet, and we've managed to make a signing, which is always nice. Came as a little bit of a surprise to me, because I know there was a lot of talk when the window opened about Wilkes from Barnsley, and I think McGann got interviewed about Herbie Kane and pretty much rubbished it, so I actually thought it was basically no chance. And then sort of out of the blue, he got announced, which was great and really refreshing to see a true statement of intent, really, because we were just talking last week about how we heard similar last year about making funds available or trying to find some signings in the January window, and then I think only one or maybe two players came in that window in the end. And to actually have someone come in early this window not only probably gives the players a boost that there is actually those reinforcements coming, but also kind of gives the whole club a bit of a lift, that there is that optimism and that the club is really taking this run for the playoffs seriously.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I mean, it took me a bit by surprise as well. I mean, that we talked a lot in the summer window about him coming in, and it sort of never really quite happened. And then so I guess I didn't really expect it to get revisited. And as you said, McCann sort of rubbished that rumor, but then then he's come in and played quite well on the in the cup match. But yeah, I think in terms of other players that are available, I've heard the rumor about Wilkes, but I've also just been reading today that it seems like it's not going great. They've got other players
Really
sort of
strange.
lined up. Yeah, because it was another one like similar to Kane that we were mentioned with earlier, and then they've worked together. It didn't really seem like there was going to be a lot that was going to stop Wilkes from joining, but for whatever reason, it seems to be going a bit slower than was anticipated. But I think I just saw today, was it Martin Samuelson, a West Ham lad? Don't know a great deal about him, but
all I know is there was a cup game a few seasons ago with the under-23s where there was Bowen, Batty, and a few others on our side. There was a few pretty decent players on West Ham's side too, and he was basically the best player on the pitch, which we've heard before. I heard similar about a game against Liverpool where Kevin Stewart apparently stood out. So, and look, I mean, Kevin Stewart has turned out to be quite good for us as well. So those reports can sort of bear a bit of weight, but until he actually gets into the side and starts playing, you never really know how he's going to go. But yeah, I mean, look, he sounds quite promising as well. There was the Joseph Zun, I think is how you'd pronounce it, from Derby as well, which sounds a bit like our alternative to Wilkes. They were sort of trying to put a bit of pressure on them to get a move on with Wilkes, or else there's genuine interest in him as well. So look, there seems to be a few genuine names being floated around, which is always exciting.
The flip side of that is, what do you expect that any of that we will get rid of, or any players will leave in this window?
I would,
a la like Henriksen or Milinkovic, perhaps, or
I would expect, to be honest. I think the interest in the winger is almost to replace Milinkovic, who has not had any impact at all on the squad. And whilst Bowler's been really good, you probably want depth on both sides. So I'm hoping. I mean, everyone's sort of looking at Wilkes and looking at those other wingers that we're looking at, and sort of probably jumping to the conclusion that Bowen's off. But I would sort of expect that if we were genuinely going to be selling Bowen in this window, A, if it happens, it happens, but B, he's going to go for a pretty decent fee, so we'd probably be looking at bringing in a pretty decent player as his replacement either this window or next. So I don't think looking at these sorts of fringe guys really says a whole lot one way or the other about Bowen. It's probably more to do with Milinkovic. So I would see Henriksen and Milinkovic probably being the only outs this window. I mean, sort of trying to speak a bit optimistically there. Look, if we were down in 17th, 18th sort of position, I could see Bowen leaving this window, but I just can't see what logical sense there is in him leaving a team on the cusp of the playoffs for an Aston Villa or a Norwich or someone like, or a Bournemouth, or someone who very, very, it's an unlikely chance that we're going to go up, but in the situation that we were to go up and whatever team he goes to goes down, how bad a decision would that look to be when there's no risk for him staying with us for another half season? He's playing so well anyway. his reputation's not going to get any worse between now and summer, and he'll probably have a much better team to pick from in the summer, and we'll also know what division he's playing in for the following 12 months rather than only the following 6 months.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think, yeah, in terms of Bowen, it would be, I mean, yeah, as you said, it would be daft of them to sell him now. You wait 6 months and you find out, yeah, where we stand. And as you said, like his value is not going to change much in 6 months. I can't see it, like, based on what he's done so far. I can't, like, it's not going to drop any. The 6 months that he loses off his contract is not going to. I don't think that's going to affect his valuation much, because his valuation basically for the most part is potential and
it's,
like what
and
he's
it's,
doing
and it's demand
doing
as
at
well.
the moment. Yeah.
So it's like, yes, he'll be in the last 12 months of his deal, but that doesn't really matter if there's 5 or 6 clubs after him. We can still demand top dollar pretty much.
Yeah. What was the other one? I mean, we've seen approaches for Lopez as well already, which reminds me of when we bought Shane Long, and we was at the club for
Perfect,
6 months or something.
I had the exact same. I had the exact same thought, and it raises the question of, are we actually dumb not taking the money? I mean, what did we buy him for? I'm sure it was either a free transfer or it was a very, very minimal fee.
I don't think it was much. I think it was one of those, like, might have been a 6-figure. Up a few $100,000.
So you almost think, is it almost dumb? I mean, especially if McGann's saying it was more than just, it's not just $1 million, it's more. So maybe it's, call it $1.5 million sort of thing. Are we almost dumb not taking it when you say, look at the profit you're making on a player after just 6 months? Yes, he's played quite well for us. I wouldn't say he's crucial to the team, not even in the same way that Long was. Long and Jelavic had a great strike partnership, and then we broke that up. And that was probably more damaging for the side than if we were to sell Lopez. And you think that money coming in becomes maybe 2 or 3 players in this window that we might not have been able to afford otherwise. And it's just such an easy profit after 6 months that, I mean, in my head, because I had the same thought of comparing it to Long, where you think we doubled our money or something on Long in 6 months, and it was just crazy not to take the money.
Yeah, I don't know. It makes an interesting one. I mean, Kane's come in. If you get another, if you end up with, Samuelson, I think, who's more of a midfielder than a winger anyway, then you start going, okay, how desperately do we need? I mean, we've got how long until Stewart's back?
I think Stewart's back next month. So then we'd have Stewart, Batty, Irvine, Lopez, Terrell potentially, although apparently Kane's basically a replacement for him because he's always out injured. Stewart, and Lopez. So you'd have 6 or 7 or 8 really, because Kane as well. 8 midfielders plus if Samuelson comes in, that's 9.
Yeah, for 3 spots.
Yeah, you'd have exactly. You're batting 3 deep in every position basically. So yeah, look, it's an interesting one, and it'll be interesting to see if they come back with an increased offer and whether we do waiver, because I think it gets to a point where you say, well, just take the money.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's an interesting one. I guess it depends on how crucial McCann sees Lopez. But I mean, while he's, as you said, like, he's been pretty good, he's really sort of stepped up over the last maybe month or so. But I think he's not crucial in the same way that we think of, like, Bowen, for example.
No, exactly.
So,
well, but moving on then to the other game that we had over the weekend, which was a fantastic win against Rotherham, which I guess, in some senses, can you really say that against a team in a division below you, against 10 men for most of the game? But at the end of the day, you always love to see those last-minute winners, and it's always good to get the heart pumping when it goes your way, and your talisman gets 3 goals as well is great as well. So, look, I mean, we opened the scoring through Eaves after about 10 minutes, which was a great way to start the game before getting pegged back with a pretty soft goal. Then there was the pretty uncontroversial red card, which somehow became this big flashpoint for the game, where Lewis Potter then gets booed for the rest of the game, presumably because the Rotherham fans are thinking he's made the most of it when it's a pretty clear-cut red. They then score a wonder goal from a throw-in, which you can't do a whole lot about. And then it's the Tom Eaves show to get us back and to win us the game. So what was your thoughts of the game, and how did you see it playing out?
I watched the highlights, and I was sort of... I was a bit confused as to how it had all sort of come about. It seemed like it was a bit frenetic at times. I mean, great to see Eaves get a hat trick. I think the best part about that was he said after the game, he said the match ball's sleeping with me and my missus is in the next room.
That was
I
great.
thought that was hilarious.
And
But
that's always been the thing with Eaves is that it's so hard to. We've had so many of those sorts of strikers who haven't scored many goals, where it's quite easy to get on their backs and get annoyed at them. But it's so hard to dislike Eaves because he's just got such a good personality.
yeah, and I think when you compare even to some of the others, I mean, not saying the others didn't work hard, but you sort of see every game. Like Eaves is like he's working his backside off to get goals and get in positions. And I mean, he got three against Rotherham with two of them against 10 men, but he's starting to get in the right positions. I think McCann even said like he's been working with Eaves a lot, just working on him getting into the right positions at the right time and not necessarily worrying so much about all the other stuff. Just if he gets in the right positions, he scores. And I think he's just about doubled his like overall tally for us now in one game. So and he's scored, been scoring a little bit more. So hopefully he's coming into that sort of or regaining that form that saw him score whatever ridiculous amount of goals it was for Gillingham before we signed him. But
yeah, that's it. And I think it's got to do wonders for his confidence scoring those goals. As you say, even though it's against a lower league team, it's just you're always going to be more confident after having a hat trick.
Yeah, and I think regardless of whether it's lower league or higher league team or whatever, it's a competitive match, and those goals actually won us the game.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not like it was like a 6-0 win or something.
Yeah, it's a whole other level of he's got to take confidence from that and got to feel really good about that. I think KLP Ken Lewis Potter, he's just. I mean, it was a pretty horrendous tackle, to be honest. I think came off a bit of a heavy touch by him, but I don't know what that defender was thinking. Just threw himself in there, hit him halfway up his leg. Oh, it was bad. He was probably lucky not to come out of that a lot worse than he did and everything. But I'm good to see him, even if if it's cup matches or whatever. But he's really starting to find himself more integrated into this first team, which is something that we mentioned at the beginning of the season about players that we were looking to follow that Bowen mold of getting into the first team and starting to be crucial players for us. And it's good to see those academy boys coming through and doing well. What else we got? I think everyone really played pretty well in that.
What did you make of? I mean, Bowen, Grzycki, and Irvine all came on as a triple sub around the 60-minute mark, which I guess at that point we'd had the halftime talk. We'd come out, not a whole lot had changed. They were still on top, and McGann basically just rolled the dice and went for it. And it pretty clearly changed the game in our favour because I think we scored not too long after that, and really sort of just started dominating and pressing them after that. Were you sort of happy to see us kind of go gung ho like that, or would you rather not have Bowen and Grzycki, being used for the game and giving them a bit more rest?
Oh, look, I guess I can see the merits of sort of both sides of that, but at the end of the day, like we wanted to win the game, and so we were in a position where we needed to make a change and to inject some quality into the game. And I was probably a little bit surprised to see a triple sub like so early. But then there's no extra time. It would have been a replay if it ended a draw. So I've got no real problem with it. I mean, they still got. They didn't have to do as much work as if they it's not too much 30 minutes. They probably would have liked it just to still get a bit of a run and stretch their legs out a little bit before they in preparation. They get a whole week off now. I think he said they were going to get a few days everyone was going to get a couple of days to recover. And
Turbo was up at the Snow, I think, in Poland. So I was a bit nervous that he was going to get injured. I was, it's great to see you relaxing, but don't get get a ski injury or something.
Yeah, I didn't see that one, but yeah, that's crazy. I guess that's the thing, like when you're there and you're so close to Europe and everything, it's so easy for them to just get around and go and if they get a couple of days off, go and go. And why wouldn't you if you could? I mean, if I was that close that I could had a couple of days and I could go to slopes, go to the Alps. Like, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got Chelsea in the fourth round, so yeah, it's always, I mean, it's a mixed bag because you kind of want to see how far you can go. But for me, at least, the Cup is always a really good opportunity to play those Premier League sides that we can't play week in, week out in the Championship and sort of test ourselves. Because I'm sure someone like a Bowen or a Grzycki would be licking their lips at the chance to prove themselves against that higher opposition and to show that they've got that quality about their game. And whether it's to put their name out there for a transfer, who knows, or whether it's just because they really want to test themselves at that highest level, I'm sure all the boys are really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it makes for an interesting matchup in a couple of different reasons. I think it'll be interesting to see what McCann does in terms of the lineup on the day and what team he goes with. Is he gonna go, okay, Chelsea's a bit more of a test than Rotherham's going to be, and I've got to play my first team in this, or is he going to stick with the let's call them the cup team of the guys that aren't getting regular minutes, but who probably are going to struggle a little bit more against Chelsea, but who knows? It'd be an interesting one. Two, young, up and coming managers up against each other.
And in fairness, I mean, you look at the side that we put out against Rotherham. If you bring in Pennington at right back for Mackenzie, and maybe call it Elder in at left back or Kingsley in at left back, that side isn't terrible. You're probably a little bit light on at left wing with Lewis Potter there, but with Eaves up top, a pretty solid midfield. If you had Kane, maybe Lopez and Batty, it's as far as second 11s go for us, we've had much worse than that side that we could be putting out. And I'm sure, like you're saying, I'm sure with Chelsea he'd probably make a few more additions from the first team as well. But anyway, if we look ahead now to Fulham at home, which is a pretty mouthwatering game, like we were sort of mentioning before, the chances of moving into the top six with a win, I think if we do beat Fulham, we're a pretty decent chance of finishing the round in fifth, if a few other results go our way. At home, I think it is, yeah, it's at home because we beat them 3-0 away. And they haven't been in great form. I think they lost their last game to Reading in the league. So it's a pretty decent chance there to really take something out of that game.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game on the weekend. It's sort of, I think I sort of mentioned before, like this, we're on the cusp, and these are the games where this last season these were the make or break games, but this season, as you sort of said, we've got a little bit more time on our hands this time around. We're in a much stronger position, but still, if we can, I'm really looking forward to this to see how we respond to being in this position.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've got a pretty decent record against them. I think we've won 3 of our last 6. And obviously we've had that pretty decent home win against them in the Premier League where we won 6-0 as well. So we seem to somewhat have the wood over them. I know they did beat us 4-1 in a FA Cup game, I think it was a few years ago. But other than that, it's all generally gone our way. What would you do with our lineup? Would you sort of, I guess Kane looked pretty impressive in the cup match. Would you sort of bring him into the first 11, or would you sort of try to stick with the same side that won the last game against Sheffield Wednesday?
I think I'd be keeping pretty similar to how we won against Sheffield Wednesday. I think Kane's going to probably come in onto the bench. But I think, I feel like it'll be pretty similar to that game, to the last league match. We've been fairly consistent in that lineup, and that's starting to really reap the rewards. So I'd be expecting a pretty similar lineup.
Fair enough. And what's your prediction for the result?
I'm gonna go with a 2-0 win.
I like it. Yep, I'll probably go similar. Do you have any ideas on the goal scorers? I reckon Bowen's on for a goal.
I actually think Grzycki's gonna nab one this weekend.
Yeah. Fair enough.
He's due for one, I reckon.
Yeah. Who did he score against? He scored against Birmingham, didn't he? So yeah, he's sort of starting to get his eye back into it. So yeah, I'm sure he'll be out for a goal against them. And of course, if we can keep them quiet, Mitrovic is, I think, 2 goals ahead of Bowen in the Golden Boot. So bit of added motivation to get a clean sheet in that one, I suspect. But we'll finish things off now with our football flashback of the week, and it is to a game from just about, when was it? It was 2017, I think. Am I getting my years right? Or was it 2016? 2017, I think it was, against Bournemouth in the league under Marco Silva. A 3-1 win against Bournemouth, with a double from Hernandez and a Mings own goal rounding it out. And it was such a great game because we'd been struggling for form for so long under Phelan, and he'd finally gotten the sack, and Silva came in, sort of sparked us to life. And this was the first game that we really sort of had that sense that maybe he could turn things around, because of course we'd lost to Bournemouth away 6-1 earlier in the season, so this was such a strong litmus test of how we could turn things around. And in particular, that second Hernandez goal just felt such like one of the goals that he'd scored the season before in the Championship, that you kind of got the sense that maybe if he could get his confidence going, he could then suddenly start scoring almost every week for us, just like he had the season before. So I love this game, and looking back on this game, just because it gave us such that sense of optimism. Obviously didn't pan out too well, but it was a great first win under Silva.
Yeah, it was a good game. I think it was interesting afterwards. Silva basically said, it's the first time I've seen all of these boys smiling after a match or something like that. Like, that's just how hard that season had been. And it was, we gave away a penalty to start off. Maguire tripping someone in the box, which was great. And then I think like the commentators are there just pretty much going, well, here we go again, Hull's bottom of the league, and they're sort of showing why. And then we just sort of, I guess we just worked our way into the match and started to turn the screws a little bit. The first goal was that beautiful Robertson cross for Hernandez to head it in. That was I just watched the highlights before this, and I was just blown away. It was that what we came to love about Robertson, those deliveries, and what's made him so successful at Liverpool now as well.
I suspect that would that have been almost one of Jakupovic's first games in that, because he obviously then took over as keeper for the second half of the season. But I think almost up until that point, Harper might have been in goal. Not Harper. Marshall might have been in goal.
You'd be probably pretty close, because Marshall was definitely preferred to start for the start of the season. So I'm not sure, but it would have had to be close. But you're right, when Silva came in, Jakupovic definitely became number one.
And it's quite interesting. I mean, looking at that lineup, none of those players were the players that Silva signed. I think Nias came off the bench, and I guess Evandro probably did as well, because they were a double signing. But it's quite interesting looking at that lineup that they were all sort of our traditional sort of players that had been with us for a few seasons. And it's with sort of a tinge of sadness you look at the fact that Ryan Mason started that game, and you look at the next fixture, which was against Chelsea, and was unfortunately the last game of his career. It's sort of a side that, what could have been with that side, because you look, Snodgrass is still in the Premier League, playing quite well for West Ham, as you just said with Robertson. He's also up there doing quite well. Maguire's at United. It's a pretty strong side, and it's one of those sides where you look at the names on that team sheet and you just wonder, how did that team get relegated?
Yeah, it was and that's sort of what, it doesn't matter how how good your squad is or anything, if they're not getting the right instruction, which it'd be hard to argue that for the first half of that season, or for most of that season, that they were getting the right instruction. Unfortunately, Phelan's legacy at Hull City is not a very promising one.
No, absolutely. And I mean, you look at even Fulham, our opponent this weekend, and they had quite a strong squad, had a reasonable start to the Premier League last season, and just slipped away. So it's going to be a really fascinating game with them on the weekend. Huge stakes for both sides, and a lot riding on the result. But here's hoping we can get the 3 points. So thank you for joining me today, Dan.
No worries.
And thank you everyone for listening in. Until next time, come on City. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter
at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
This is on fire. We're going higher and higher. There's no turning back 'cause you're out.